Would you believe me if I told you that there was a liquid that was 3 times the density of water? Well, there is, and it's called sodium polytungstate. When 2 wash bottles are filled up to the same volume with sodium polytungstate and DI water, the deionized water weighs about 169.4 grams, while the sodium polytungstate bottle weighs 410.1 grams. So you may be asking yourself, okay, that's cool, liquid that's about as 3 times as dense as water, but you also might be asking, why? What's the purpose of it? Well, one of those purposes is dense media separation, which is a process in mineral processing where you use a dense media, in this case sodium polytungstate, and your mineral, the lighter section floats and the heavier section sinks, and it's a pretty cool process. So what's going on here is I'm separating 2 different minerals. One of them is lighter and one of them is heavier. One of them has a specific gravity less than 2.9, and that mineral will float, and the mineral that has a specific gravity of greater than 2.9 will sink to the bottom, and we'll have our mineral separation. Okay, so say you want to do dense media separation. Why would you choose sodium polytungstate over any other liquid? Well, for one thing, it's one of the heavier dense medias out there. You can also do ferrosilicone suspension or magnetite suspension, which is where you have these really fine ground particles of magnetite or ferrosilicone and they're in a suspension, but those settle out over time, whereas this remains in solution, so you don't have to worry about your media settling to the bottom, because then it doesn't really work that well. This is tunable up to a certain level. About the most you can go with sodium polytungstate is a specific gravity of 3, but you can always make it less dense if you want. Additionally, as far as dense medias go, this is pretty environmentally friendly. Some of the other dense medias out there, not so good, as you can see. Besides all the other benefits that sodium polytungstate has compared to other traditionally used heavy liquids, it's also recyclable. You can reuse it several times by boiling off any water you added to dilute it and getting it back to a higher specific gravity. So that's really handy and helps out with the cost a little bit. Additionally, it's also less viscous than some of the other heavy liquids, which makes it really nice for doing dense media separations because you won't have as much of a surface tension effect on your particles. The main drawback of using sodium polytungstate as a dense media is the cost. How much do you think that this sodium polytungstate cost? 5 pounds. If you guessed around $1,440, you'd be right. Even with the expensive and frankly prohibitive cost, it's still a pretty cool liquid to get to play around with and do experiments with. So yeah, sodium polytungstate, pretty cool.